Good morning, councillors, council staff, visitors. I'd like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land in which they are gathered and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting of the 23rd of March 2022. I declare this meeting open at 10 a.m. I'd like to advise the meeting attendees that this meeting is webcast and audio recorded. So can the gallery please be upstanding if you're able to, and join me in a moment of contemplation. Over the past month, our city has endured some testing times. We have been faced with the worst floods the city has seen since 1974. Not surprising, the resilience of the people of Logan has shone through, and the support and care shown for one another is remarkable. As a council, we are committed to getting the city back on track, and I'm grateful to you, my fellow councillors, for quickly supporting a flood recovery package to assist our impacted community. The way in which our community has mobilised to lead the recovery across the city is commendable. It truly has been a community-led recovery. Once again, this has highlighted how we all look out for each other when times are tough. We know the recovery will be a marathon. The damage across the city was significant. 265 houses were inundated, 57 businesses, but that number impacted was far greater. Council infrastructure was also significantly impacted, including 60 community facilities, 230 parks and 147 roads affected by storm or flood damage. To everyone involved in keeping our city and people safe during the flooding event, and all those who have stepped up for the recovery, thank you. The list is endless, but to the council staff, the SES, emergency services, the ADF, volunteers, the Logan House Fire Support Network, community organisations, and of course, my fellow councillors, thank you for your tireless dedication. Thank you. Councillors, I note that Councillor Bradley has requested a leave of absence due to attending our self-funded, work-related self-improvement course that has been rescheduled from last year due to COVID. Do any councillors have a leave of absence to declare? No others? There being none, I now move a motion that Councillor Bradley be granted a leave of absence in accordance with section 53C3 of the Local Government Act and Committee Meeting Code. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Karansky has seconded the motion. I now put the matter to the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously, therefore the motion has been carried. Councillors, I now refer to condolences. Do any councillors have a condolence to raise? I'll go through the councillors. Councillor Lane? No. And Councillor Wilcox. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On the 9th of March, Stanley Obie passed away from the result of sustaining 90% burns to his body in a house fire in Newby. Tragically, Stanley lost his life as a result of suspected domestic violence. Unfortunately, I didn't personally know Stanley, but I know that he loved his 3 children and his partner. And as a nurse, even though he knew his fate, he was still concerned that his children and partner were safe. I pray that Stanley didn't suffer in his final hours, and as a mother, sister, daughter and community member, it is hard to comprehend the events, the loss and the destruction that occurred that night. I hope that Stanley's 3 children and partner will be able to grieve and come to terms with what has happened and rebuild their lives, and I pass my condolences on to all of them. I have such gratitude and thanks to all of the neighbours and community members who came together, not just on the night, but after as well. Please continue to check in with each other and make sure that you are all okay and you need support. Please ask. There is no place in society for DV. No one should suffer in silence. And if you know someone who is going through DV, please speak up. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. Councillor Murphy? No. Okay. Thank you. Now we'll stand for a moment of reflection in honour of those who have gone before us and in support of those who have been left behind. Thank you, councillors. You may sit. Councillors, I now open the floor for congratulation requests. Do any councillors have a congratulations request? We'll start at Councillor Lane and we'll work our way around.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor, and I note your reflection this morning actually talked about what happened in council during the course of the floods. What you didn't raise was that council staff did an amazing job of supporting their community. And I say supporting their community because a lot of council officers live in Logan and work in Logan City Council. Now, we had 147 roads that were impacted by flood inundation, or the equivalent of 95 kilometres worth of road. We've only got 4 left that are closed. That's an amazing effort less than 4 weeks after what was a brutal flood. We had people questioning us on our recovery hubs. Kingston East Neighbourhood Centre had 818 people go through seeking assistance, guidance and support. We had Beanley PCYC, which Councillor Murphy had a lot to do with. 709 people walked through that door asking for help. That's an amazing response. And Councillor Bannon with Jim Boomba, the Caddies one, 219 people walked through the door asking for guidance on what to do next. You can't stop fire, but you can stop fire, but you can't stop flood. And these waters went into people's properties, and there were people out there in our community supporting them. But most of all, our council staff were there. And I'm looking at all the directors at the moment because I hope you do pass this back to them. From Silvio Trinker and Darryl Riley in the incident control room, Ben O'Brien, Simon Malouf, Megan, who did the projections for all of the floodwaters and where they would go. This team was absolutely amazing. They tried to get ahead of the floods and door knocked where they could. They missed homes, but they went to the most dense areas of population and actually did that. Now, a number of RCM staff were on hand, engineers, technical officers. They've been temporarily seconded to form a team to actually look at our flood recovery and our infrastructure over the next 12 months and how we can access funding. Council is always working for the people of Logan. There's a significant maintenance backlog, let's be honest about that, between mowing and cleaning out drains. But it's because they actually responded to the flood as it was occurring. They've been out helping people in their homes. They've been coordinating efforts. They've been doing uplifts. Kay Sullivan, my goodness, Kay Sullivan is an amazing woman and council should be so proud to have her. Her efforts from her and her team in the recovery process is nothing short of phenomenal. She is an amazingly driven person who is doing the very best for Logan. Our councillors did the best that they could in getting the information out and making sure that people knew what was going on. So I want to say a big congratulations to all council staff, Mr Mayor, because all of them stepped up when they were needed and they did a fabulous job.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillor Russell.
Actually, not today, Mr Mayor, but I just wish to echo the sentiments that Councillor Lane has just shared.
Thank you. Councillor Karansky.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I did just also want to acknowledge that there were 2 people missing who were quite instrumental in all of this, and I'd like to acknowledge the hard work of Councillor Lane, who was ably supported by Councillor Fraser. who were very responsive and certainly supportive of me as an area councillor dealing with some of the challenges I had and heading up the councillor component of that. So thank you to both of you. Mr Mayor, I'd like to ask that congratulations be forwarded today to Mr Allen and Mrs Glory Vickery, and they're from Palm Lakes, Bethania, and they'll be celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary, so quite a milestone, and I wish them future years of successful marriage and happiness as we move into their current time. Thank you.
That will be done. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Of course, want to echo the sentiment that Councillor Lane expressed so well, and give credit to you as well, working long hours in the incident room. And I wanted to give a big congratulations to Darryl Riley for putting up with some pretty stressful phone calls late at night from both you and I as we echoed the fears and the concerns of our residents, and he responded so well, and we're so proud of him and all of our staff. Mr Mayor, I would like to offer, on a much more regular type of congratulations, I'd like to offer congratulations to the Australian Dance Sports Society Queensland branch for the Crystal Classic. I'm quite sure that Councillor Wilcox and Councillor Harrimeyer will also want to be included on this congratulations. They held it at Metro, and it was the biggest dance sport competition that the country has ever seen. The standard was so good that I went earlier in the day to see the young people. Oh, Councillor Lane went there as well. I'm sure she'll want to have her name included on the congratulations, Mr Mayor. I went early in the day to see the young people perform, but then the quality was so good, I said I'll come back for the finals and see it again. And it's just incredible to see people from all over the country come into Logan, and all the organiser could say was how fantastic our facility was, that it was unique, that they had nothing like this else in the country that they could run an event like that from. So great work by council staff in the refurbishment that's happened down at Metro with the new surface, and great work by Crystal Classics for putting on such a well-organised and massive event in the best city in the country. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I wouldn't mind being on that list as well.
You want to be on that list?
Yeah.
There we go, Mr.
And Councillor Russell, I saw there as well. Mr Mayor, I'd like to congratulate Mr Bryan and Mrs Kay Wecker of Logan Lee on their 60th anniversary today. 60 years, that's longer than the amalgamation of Logan City Council, as you can see, and almost as long as you've been in council yourself. Thank you.
It's not true. Councillor Fraser, Councillor Harrimeyer, Councillor Bannon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Is that on? Yep. I'd just like to congratulate to the Mustangs Rugby League Football Club. I get some crazy ideas, especially after a beer at home. And we organised a charity rugby league game. We organised it in one day. So we pulled together 5 different clubs. There was Sunnybank, Greenbank, Jimboomba, Beaudesert and Mustangs. We raised $12,000 on the day. So thank you to Scott Buckholtz, Bert Van Madam, Linus Power, John Krause for chucking some money in. Logan Village Pub chucked in $1,000, so some of that money went to the Logan Village Lions Club because their truck blew up, the poor buggers doing flood recovery, and the rest went for Defenders for Hope. So small little local charities, but I think it was really good what Jeff did at the club. I know you come down, and Mindy and Tony and Nat come down, and everyone, so Laurie. So yeah, just a congratulations to those guys for helping the local charity.
Councillor Bannon, it was a great day, and I noticed your son's team really cleaned up. You must be a bit of a coach. Okay, Councillor Stemp. No, Councillor Wilcox. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have 2 congratulations, but I'd also like to agree with Councillor Lane. There was a lot of hard work done throughout the city with the floods. Our area was definitely impacted. The clean-up has now started, so also congratulations to Michael Asnikar. He's been amazing. He's been on the phone every day with myself, cleaning up the after effects of the floods. So the waste management team have done an amazing job. But on to the congratulations. I'd like congratulations to be forwarded to Rain Lovebright from Let's Go Akamira. So, Mr Mayor, on Saturday the 5th of March, the community of Beenleigh welcomed over 2,000 people to our first ever anime and pop culture convention in the city of Logan. You should have seen the locals and the people dressed up in the streets. They were having a great time. It was a hugely popular event, and I'm extremely proud to hear that over 1,000 tickets were sold on the day, mostly to locals. And I want to thank the Beenleigh Events Centre team for working so hard with the event organisers on the day to pull off this unique event. Mr Mayor, can I ask that congratulations please be passed on to Rain Lovebright. She's the small business owner in the centre of Beenleigh and who spearheaded this event. Rain started her business just prior to the pandemic beginning, but she has gone from strength to strength in our little CBD. So if you could please pass congratulations on to her. And secondly, this is really passionate for me, the Eagleby Giants Rugby League Football Club. Mr Mayor, it is with great pleasure that I acknowledge the success of the Eagleby Giants and at the National Good Sports Awards in Melbourne recently. This little club was recognised for their passion and commitment to achieving better health outcomes for our local community. Eagleby Giants are now the official, drumroll, National Junior Club of the Year, Queensland Club of the Year, and the Vice President, Chappie Nick Carroll, has been named Queensland Volunteer of the Year. Can I ask, please, that congratulations be made to the club and Chappie Nick on their achievements? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. That will be done. Councillors, I now refer to the minutes of the previous ordinary council meeting. I move that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 23rd of February 2022 be confirmed. Is there a seconder? Councillor Raven seconded the motion. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? No one wishes to speak to the motion. I now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That has been carried unanimously. Therefore, the motion has been carried. So we also have the confirmation of the minutes of the previous special council meeting. I now refer to the minutes of the previous special council meeting. I move that the minutes of the special council meeting held on the 9th of March 2022 be confirmed. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Hall has seconded the motion. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? No one wishes to speak to the motion. I now put the matter to the floor to vote. All those in favour? That has been carried unanimously. Therefore, the motion has been carried. We have no business arising from the minutes to consider, so we'll go straight into the committee recommendations. I now refer to the City Planning, Economic Development and Environment Committee meeting held on the 15th of March 2022. Councillor Raven, Chairperson of the City Planning, Economic Development and Environment Committee, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Before we move into discussions, do any councillors have any new conflicts of interest they'd like to declare? There being none, I will speak to the report. Mr Mayor, it was a great committee meeting because, as you say, a fast meeting is a good meeting. We kept it under an hour despite having an adjournment in the middle. One of the items that I wanted to speak to, though, was item 5.2 because it's particularly relevant to what's happened this week with the city deal. That's the draft waste management and resource recovery strategy. We're putting it out to public consultation, Mr Mayor, and it's so important because, as Councillor Lane said earlier this week on ABC Radio, waste isn't sexy, but it's very, very important to deal with it properly. And waste is actually an asset. It's a resource that we can use to make sure that we're protecting the environment while also protecting the hip pocket of our residents. Because, as you know, Mr Mayor, over the next 10 years, the waste levy, which is here to stay, will gradually be, the refund that we get will gradually be reduced. And that will impact our residents when they go to take things to the tip, unless we can do the right thing. Unless we can keep diverting waste from landfill, recycling everything that we can, and really being innovative about our approach to waste and taking big, bold decisions. And I'm really glad to see that as part of the city deal, you managed to secure $105 million of competitive funding for waste recovery. Obviously, no one can compete with Logan when it comes to how well we manage our waste. So I'm looking forward to getting a big slice of that pie, Mr Mayor. And with the announcement that you and the two other partners in the Sub-Regional Waste Alliance have recently made about having a waste and recycling facility at Logan, so that we no longer need to rely on private enterprise. We can do it ourselves and the ratepayers can benefit. I can't wait to see you doing some big announcements soon.
Hearing Chinese whispers that will be brought forward too. So I'm very positive that we'll hear an announcement, hopefully before the election, but yeah, very positive about that. And a lot of local government work, a lot of collaboration, a lot of meetings, but it's good to see that the rubber is hitting the road, as they say. Councillor Raven?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and it's work that's been done for years in the lead up. It's not something that happened overnight. It's something that you've been working on for a long time, and I know the staff have been supporting you in that. Mr Mayor, I'd now like to move that the minutes of the City Planning, Economic Development and Environment Committee meeting held on the 15th of March 2022 be confirmed, and that the recommendations of the City Planning, Economic Development and Environment Committee meeting held on the 15th of March be adopted.
Okay, before you do that, Councillor Raven, does any other councillors wish to speak on any of those matters? No? Okay, Councillor Raven has moved it. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Stemp has seconded the motion. Anyone wish to speak to the motion? No one wishes to speak to the motion. I'll now put the matter to the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That has been carried unanimously. Is there any councillors wish to put their name against any of the committee decisions there? No? Okay, thank you, councillors. I'll now keep moving. Now referred to the City Infrastructure Committee held on the 15th of March 2022. Councillor Lane, Chairperson of the City Infrastructure Committee, you may proceed.
Thanks very much, Mr Mayor. I now refer to the City Infrastructure Committee meeting. Before we move into any discussion, do any councillors have any new conflicts of interest to declare? There being none, I'll now speak to the recommendations. Mr Mayor, we had a lively infrastructure meeting this time round. We went into confidential on Faster Rail and discussed with Queensland Rail about what's happening with the plans, where we're going in the future, what their consultation looks like, and when we can expect a final plan. And I know that local residents along the rail line from Currabee to Beenleigh have a big interest in that area. We also discussed road safety strategy that Council's putting forward. Many thanks to Kamal Ranawira and Carl Bayer for their hard work on that road safety strategy. It's not easy getting the right mix and making sure that you've got every area covered, but they managed to do it together with a number of questions from councillors. The next one was heavy vehicle use on Plunkett Road, which I know Councillor Karansky raised as a motion, and there was a lot of discussion around that area. The road statements of intent, which is our future city roads, where we're looking in the future to actually build our roads, expand our roads, and also the Springwood Reservoir was on the mix of things discussed during the committee. Now, Springwood Reservoir was something that Councillor Bradley wanted raised in the committee, and water security was the actual reason for the closure of one of those areas. Now, I'm happy to open the floor to other councillors, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Karansky.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, councillors. I'd like to speak to item 4.1, if I may, and thank you for your support in bringing a report back to council on heavy vehicle usage and road safety on Plunkett Road. As requested, the report spoke to meeting safety and amenity outcomes for local residents, and I'm pleased to see that the audit recommended the installation of guideposts, line marking, reflective road markers, advanced warning signs of upcoming hazards like sharp bends, protection of culverts, verge improvements, and consideration be given to pavement widening or lowering the speed limit. Officers will now prioritise the treatment of each of these identified issues, and given the road hierarchy, I'm advised that officers cannot, however, restrict the usage of heavy vehicles on Plunkett Road. That being said, I support the residents' call for a reduction in the speed limit to 70 kilometres an hour and welcome officers' further investigation into this reduction. Unfortunately, I'm advised the proposed works do not fall with any of Council's budgets and rely upon the Division for Local Infrastructure Program budget, which is limited. I note Council officers are, however, investigating grant funding opportunities and are actively pursuing flood damage funding also. I look forward to seeing these improvements made for local residents and wholeheartedly support the report coming back to Council. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Karansky. Any other councillors wish to speak? No, I'll hand it back to you, Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much, Mr Mayor. I now move that the minutes of the City Infrastructure Committee meeting held on 15 March 2022 be confirmed, and that the recommendations of the City Infrastructure Committee meeting held on 15 March 2022 be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillor Lane has moved the motion. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Fraser has seconded the motion. Anyone wish to speak to the motion? No one wishes to speak to the motion. I'll now put the matter to the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That has been carried unanimously. Therefore, the motion has been carried. Any councillors wish to put their name against any of the agenda items from that report? No? Okay, we'll keep moving. Councillors, I now refer to the City Lifestyle Committee meeting held on the 16th of March 2022. Councillor Karansky, Chairperson of the City Lifestyle Committee, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Before we move into discussions, do any councillors have any new conflicts of interest they wish to declare? There being none, I'll now speak to the recommendations. At the City Lifestyle Committee last week, we welcomed the team from Queensland Rugby League to provide councillors with a presentation on their proposal for the activation of the Logan Sports Metro Park. Thank you to Queensland Rugby League for sharing their plans for the future, and we look forward to discussions continuing in this space. Councillors received an update on the rectification works associated with Underwood Park Multi-Sports Development, which provided details on specific areas including the buildings and the netball courts. The Community Services team shared the second progress report for the 2019 to 2022 Access and Inclusion Plan, which upholds the rights of people with a disability and guides Council's commitment toward creating an accessible and inclusive city. The plan includes 84 actions across 9 priority areas identified by the Logan community. Councillors received a report presenting research and consultation outcomes that identify opportunities to improve council grants to the community, and I know that this report will be warmly received by a number of councillors and the community. The report included insights and recommendations which can assist in streamlining the processes, the policy and the programs. In general business, we received a progress update on community service related activities being undertaken in response to the recent severe wet weather event, from the mowing and clean-up of parks, targeted campaigns to address the public health threat arising from mosquitoes, to reuniting lost pets with their owners and assessing flood-impacted sport and recreation facilities. The team have been hard at work responding to the unprecedented event in our city. Our community service team has been focusing on the human side of the recovery efforts, with our customer experience and community engagement teams mobilised quickly to assist Brisbane City Council with taking after-hour phone calls, answering thousands of calls, and our library team worked very hard to provide safe, welcoming spaces for flood-impacted community members to assist them with applying for disaster recover funding. Council's media and marketing teams also worked hard to ensure the community was kept up to date with all of the relevant information through media releases and social media. Across the board, our people worked hard to deliver essential community services, and for that I commend them all on their hard work.
Thank you, Councillor Karansky. Any other councillors wish to make any comments? No, I hand it back to you, Councillor Karansky.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd now like to move that the minutes of the City Lifestyle Committee meeting held on the 16th of March 2022 be confirmed, and that the recommendations of the City Lifestyle Committee meeting held on the 16th of March 2022 be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Karansky. Councillor Karansky has moved the motion. I ask for the seconder. Councillor Hall is seconding the motion. Anyone wish to speak to the motion? No one wishing to speak to the motion. I now put the matter to the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Therefore, the motion has been carried. Any councillors wish to put their name, record their name against any of the agenda items from that report? None being so, I will continue. And we'll go to the last committee, which is the City Governance. So I'll now refer to the City Governance Committee meeting held on the 16th of March 2022. Councillor Wilcox, Chairperson of City Governance Committee, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And before we move into discussion, do any councillors have any new conflict of interest to declare on any of the items? No, there being none, I will briefly speak to the recommendations. At the City Governance Committee meeting last week, we spoke about all of our normal things that normally come up, but we also spoke about another amendment to the staff interaction procedure and acceptable request guidelines. I'd like to thank the councillors for their debate and all of their opinions and everything that they said. We are investigating a more streamlined approach to this, so that rather than having an ad hoc manner bringing them up, so that we can continue to work effectively with the council staff and that sort of thing. And I would just like to say we are about to start more detailed budget discussions. I'd like to thank all the staff for all of their work beforehand. It's been going on for months behind the scenes, but we're about to start going into some very detailed discussions and stuff like that, and it's not 1 or 2 days, it will be quite a few days and that sort of thing spread out. So I'd like to thank the staff and wish the councillors luck, and Councillor Murphy and I will be tag teaming in and out so that we're not getting really tired, because it is quite tiring to chair those meetings. So thank you, that's all I've got.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. Any other councillors wish to make comment on any of those reports? No? Thank you, Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I now move that the minutes of the City Governance Committee meeting held on the 16th of March 2022 be confirmed, and that the recommendations of the City Governance Committee meeting held on the 16th of March 2022 be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. Councillor Wilcox has moved the motion. I ask for a seconder for the motion. Councillor Murphy has seconded the motion. Anyone wish to speak with the motion? No? Okay, councillors, I now put the matter to the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Is there any councillors wish to lodge their name against any of the items in that report? None being so, thank you, councillors. So we go to council reports. We have no council reports to consider. However, we do have a late report, which is item 12.1, 2022 federal election, council priority projects. We have one late report to consider. I now refer to item 12.1. I invite Dr. Scott Burke, Director of Innovation and City Transformation, to join the discussion. Before we open discussion on this item, do any councillors have a conflict of interest? None being so, I now refer to Dr. Burke to open discussion. Dr. Burke, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Morning, councillors. This report provides advice to Council on adding an Olympic venue for Logan to Council's list of advocacy action plan priority projects for the 2022 federal election. I'll take the report as read, but I'm happy to answer any questions that councillors might have.
Thank you, Dr. Burke. Councillors, do you have any questions that you would like to raise to Dr. Burke, or any points you would like to make? None being so, I will now move the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Raven has seconded the motion. Anyone wish to speak to the motion? No one wishes to speak to the motion. I now put the matter to the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Therefore, the motion's been carried. Okay, councillors, we'll go to petitions. Any councillors have any petitions? No petitions, thank you. We have no notified motions to consider. I'll now refer to general business. Today we are starting with Councillor 9. Councillor Bannon?
Nothing from me.
None? Okay. Councillor Stemp? Councillor Wilcox?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to also briefly touch on the floods. Recently, a staggering 887 millimetres of rain fell in February. That's more than double the nearest monthly high of 366 mils in 2020. In 3 days alone, South East Queensland received 80% of its annual rainfall. 84% of Logan suburbs were impacted by floodwater. That means 59 suburbs out of 70 were impacted, 147 streets, 265 homes and 54 businesses all had water go through them. That doesn't include the sheds, yards, paddocks that were also inundated and impacted. In Div 11, there were many impacts as well. With parts of Division 11, I had some island communities. Greenbank was cut off for days with no power, no running water and no septic, and you could hear the hum of the generators in the area. The community of Flagstone was also yet cut off, with floodwater from Flagstone Creek and Logan River cutting off access. Flagstone Creek cut off access on Teviot Road, and to the east, Henderson Creek, which is in Div 9, flowed across Cusack Lane, making it impassable for days. Eventually, Teviot Brook, which joins the Logan River, also inundated the Edward O'Neill Bridge south of Flagstone, then flowed downstream, swallowing the Payne Bridge on Cusack Lane. To make matters worse, power to Flagstone was cut for around 3 days, and impacted residents was the telecommunications being very intermittent and the kids not believing their parents that they had no internet. Our food retailers were running low on stock, and by the second day the fresh food was stripped from the shelves. Other food items were getting very low and were also then affected by no power, so no means to operate. These are the things that we take for granted. Being flooded in with no power, running low on supplies, limited phone and internet access, the community rallied and responded together, with some residents running the Flagstone Ferry and the Greenbank glider over the Flagstone Creek to ferry generators, medical supplies and special requirements to those who needed it most. It wasn't easy, but the Flagstone area toughed it out until the floodwater receded. I don't think anyone is ever fully prepared to witness the destruction that the floodwater brings. To see your home after a flood has swept through it, and it is an experience that I and my residents wish to forget, but we won't, because we will prepare for the next one. The residents of Beryl Parade at North Maclean, living on the edge of the Logan River, just beside the Maclean Bridge, which was also cut, watched as floodwaters rose through their homes. To stand in someone's lounge room and see the watermarks on the walls above your head while standing in 2 inches of the slurry-like mud is truly a humbling experience. I heard one resident ask another, "Where's your water tank?" And the reply was, "Over there in Tully Park, about 500 metres away." The clean-up started with a call to arms to the community, and they did respond. Volunteers turned up to give their time, energy and help to assist in removing flood-affected memories, household items, carpets, beds, fridges, all now with rotting food in them, all while it was muddy, wet and very, very smelly. To those volunteers who organised food and drinks and donations for the residents and workers, you know who you are, and I really do thank you. To those residents who lost so much and are still to this day trying to get their life back to normal, I think of you every day and how much you must be coping with the upheaval of a flood event. After the floodwaters receded, we could then witness the force and quantity of water that affected our roads, our parks, our council and our council community assets. To all of the road maintenance staff who were filling severe potholes even as the rain was falling, I thank you for your efforts, and thank you for probably watching my Facebook feed, because I'm pretty sure they were watching where I was. Some of the Division 11 roads were severely damaged and are already either being repaired or facing major roadworks to rectify the damage. The cleanup, although not as intense, continues today with crews still picking up flood-affected household items, and I thank the residents for their patience as this continues. It will take some time before our roads, parks and amenities will return to community expectations, and I ask for patience whilst the mowing, maintenance, road maintenance, park maintenance and our way of life in Logan returns to some normality. To all of those staff at Logan City Council who have played their part in the recovery process, I need you to know how grateful we are to your dedication during these times. And to the residents of Div 11, you should be proud of yourself. Your resilience, your charity and your assistance to your fellow neighbours has been recognised, and I thank all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. Councillor Murphy. Councillor Lane.
Always up for a good general business, Mr Mayor. Okay, so the other day I was out in the community, as I am, and a bloke walked up to me and he said, "There's nothing to do in this community." I said, "You're joking. You've got to be joking, mate." He said, what can you possibly do in this community that you can't do somewhere else? I said, "Well, we got Kingston Eats and Beats on Friday night and Dammy Im's going to be there. She's not in any other community. We've got that at our Kingston Butter Factory." He said, "Is that all you got?" I said, "No, we've got heaps. We've got May's Cottage, which is open from Thursday to Sunday. We got Milky Way Markets, which started on Friday nights. It's once a month. They run a thing down at Kingston Butter Factory. Kingston Butter Factory Markets is on every second Saturday. We've got Global Food Markets every Sunday. We've got Lakota Learner Craft. We've got Garden Club. We've got belly dancing. We've got wheelchair yoga. We've got normal chair yoga. We've got cooking at Gould Adams. We've got messy play at the family place. We've got heart walkers at Logan Central Plaza. Mate, what more do you want?" And he said, "Oh, I want to move here because I think that you've got lots of stuff." And I said, "Absolutely. Where else would you want to be?" So, Mr Mayor, my point of my general business is there's so much going on in our community and sometimes people don't hear about it. Or you can spoon feed it to them and they still don't hear about it. And sometimes it takes really blunt speaking to get the message out. And I would really love it if I was given the opportunity to get that message out as part of our local newsletter process. So in the last newsletter, we raised some issues that we wanted to put some local vibe, local stuff in there. And Mr Mayor took part of my newsletter up for his comment, so I just thought I'd raise that, where I could have put local events. But look, no, honestly, there's so much to do in Logan, and as we're recovering from floods, it was beautiful to see all the people at Eats and Beats on Friday night. People were tired, but they were happy. And then they came and supported the markets on the Sunday, and they do go along to our local clubs. So if you're at home, if you're feeling isolated, if you're bored, or if you're just ignorant of what's going on, get in touch with your local council.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. You're so true. As you know, we've just released a video for our tourism, and that will demonstrate some of the great things that are happening in the city. And if people want to see happy faces, they should get down and see me doing a citizenship, because there's lots of happy people there. I couldn't be at the Eastern Beach, so I was doing a citizenship Friday, but I heard it was successful. That was great. Okay, Councillor Russell. Councillor Karansky.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, in 2017, residents on the Albert River at Bannockburn were inundated with a 1 in 100 year riverine flood event. I'd like to share with you an extract from a letter from a resident whose home was inundated in 2017 and again in 2022. The exceptional, extreme, unusual came again just 4 years and 11 months later. Flooding is no longer an exception, no longer extreme or unusual. It now seems to be the new normal. I'm not sure if I'm writing this letter as a victim impact statement or as a council or government wake-up call. I just know I have to write it. We cannot go through this again. Some have lost everything, and some have lost not only their homes, but also their livelihoods. How do you put away the intense fear and anxiety that comes every time it rains and the rivers start to rise? How do you start again when you have nothing to give anymore? A lot of people have no insurance, not because they can't be bothered, but because they cannot get insurance, or because insurance companies have increased their premiums by so much they simply can't afford it. We built above the highest level of the 1974 floods, so there were no concerns about flooding whatsoever. We felt safe, secure, and the thought of flooding was simply not there. We had no problem getting insurance because it was simply not an issue for the insurance companies then. Now it's a different story. We are insured, but for how much longer? We need your help to feel safe again. We need you to protect us and our homes, as for many of us, this is all we have. This is what we all work so hard for, and this is not in our future. Most people here don't have a lifetime to rebuild. We need you to consider properties at risk. We need you to get the state and federal government involved, and we need you to come up with a plan, not in 5, 10 or 20 years, but now, because we don't know when the next disaster will be. Mr Mayor, I attended this resident's property and the neighbouring properties during the 2017 floods, and I was there again in 2022, and the scenes were heartbreaking. I thought this was a very poignant reminder of the recent floods from the heart of a resident who's gone through this twice in 5 years. Mr Mayor, I'd like to request that the Director of Roads and Water Infrastructure investigate this particular property with regard to riverine flooding, together with the adjacent homes that experienced riverine flooding in 2017 and 2022. And more broadly, I look forward to discussing some of the challenges experienced when we do our complete councillor debrief on the flooding for this year. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Karansky. Mr CEO, you've got that?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Yep, thank you. So that'll be taken care of. Just to say that the floods have created a lot of questions in our community. I've been summoned as Mayor to attend a meeting with all the mayors and the Deputy Premier about how we're going to solve some of these issues, and we worked all Friday afternoon and provided butcher's papers worth of ideas, and state government, councils, they will look at this, and you know, some of the answers I already know, some of the answers need to be worked out. I know that we've got to go through a process ourselves to look at our operations and also how things were conducted, whether we can improve things. We'll always look at that. And, you know, but on a scale of things, not many mistakes were made by this council. And I say that because there was an accusation by the Deputy Premier that councils overlooked their obligations to approve properties in floodland. We will look at that. But what I could clearly see, the properties that I saw have been flooded before, and we go back to 74. This was the worst flood since 74, but the flood level of 74 was a lot higher. So, but we still want to look at things, and we'll still examine things and see, particularly if any new properties went under. But you've got to remember that 74 was a long time ago, and a lot of properties have been sold and resold, and people have never seen or experienced those floods before. But realistically, if you look at our flood maps, and this is one of the issues that was brought up about when you buy a house, you must get the proper searches done. And this is a problem in that there is an opportunity to have, I think 3 searches done, and the cheap one doesn't provide that information. So a lot of people buy houses that are flood affected, and they don't realise until the flooding occurs. We have bought properties in the past. Those properties that are well and truly a danger to live in when the water is rushing very quickly are examined as a house to purchase. But other than that, properties that we purchase, we can't afford to buy all those properties. But I brought that up with the Deputy Premier and the mayors at that meeting, and obviously everything will be looked at. But when you compare ourselves to Brisbane, nowhere near as badly affected. But we'll still have to go back and look at what happened. And as you know, in the previous council meeting, we addressed climate change. That has to be addressed, and I believe the state government is also going to make us address those flood levels again. So there's going to be a lot of discussion. And as you know, we've got budget workshops and we've got planning scheme workshops. You're going to be very, very busy, councillors, in the next 6 months. Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I wasn't going to speak, but I wanted to thank Councillor Karansky for sharing that story and for her resident for taking the time to write that. It's very easy when we talk about big disasters and big events to say 285 homes impacted and just move past that as a statistic. That's 285 families whose lives have been turned upside down, who have uncertainty, who have fear, and who have trauma that comes from that. And 285 families in any community is a big deal. Now, you're right, Mr Mayor, our planning scheme has held up, because if you scaled up our population to compare it to be equal to Brisbane's, we'd have about 1,500 properties impacted, maybe 1,200 properties, homes impacted, I should say, many more properties than that. Whereas Brisbane had thousands and thousands of properties impacted. And that's because our planning scheme is preventing people from building in the floodplain. And that's why it's so important that the work that we're doing in the new planning scheme to help residents like Councillor Karansky's and mine as well, the stories that I heard where people who've been flooded before and were confident that they were safe, were scared because of the speed that the water was going past their home. They could hear the roar and they thought they just would have still water sitting around their property and that their home would be safe, but it was the speed. So, Mr Mayor, I'm very excited to see the work that we're going to do with risk-based flood mapping, which shows people what the expected speed of the water would be, where you'll get overland flows, and all of those different details that mean something more than just a blue line on a map, that actually inform the community so they can understand what to expect when we get a big flood event, so that they can be confident that this council is doing everything it can to protect them, because the first responsibility of any government is to keep its community safe and to give them the certainty that we're doing the right thing by them. So I want to thank my fellow councillors for the work that we're going to embark on this year. As you say, Mr Mayor, it's a huge year. We're going to do a review of the flood disaster recovery response. We're going to do the planning scheme. We've got the budget coming up. And I'm sure there'll be another curveball before then that the world will give to us, because that's what we're dealing with at the moment. That's the climate we're in. But I just wanted to, again, thank Councillor Karansky for bringing that up, because those individual stories really ground and anchor a tragedy so that you understand it from a human perspective instead of just a stat on a page.
Thank you, Councillor Raven, and I'm sure that Councillor Lane will testify this, that our officers knew how many houses were going to go under with the water projected. So there's been a lot of hard work done on this, and I'm quite confident that any more research on this will only help the situation in the future. Councillor Hall. Councillor Fraser, Councillor Hiromai.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Today, Council made a big decision. We voted to open an exciting new chapter when it comes to Logan Metro, and the goal is to activate that area for our community. And by activating Metro, we'll make it a sports capital of our region. Now, I'd like to thank Councillor Fraser, Councillor Bannon and Councillor Raven for their work and working to make sure that Metro is put on the map. I can't wait to see the future of this great facility and this great initiative. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hiromai. Councillors, that's all general business today. I'll ask the CEO, have you got any general business? No? Okay. So I now refer to, yep, well, that's basically the end of the meeting. So that concludes the agenda for today. I now declare the meeting closed at 10:49 a.m. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, staff.